In this presentation, I would like to introduce 4 of my dance productions in which electronic music is used in different ways. With a combination of dance and electronic music, a specifically synesthetic stage effect can be achieved, as both disciplines complement each other in performance. While the speciality of electronic music functions as a form of acoustic stage design, the dancers compensate for the lack of physicality of the loudspeaker music. Moreover, they do not claim the physical location of the performance of the respective other medium, but leave free spaces in which a flexible counterpoint becomes possible through the flowing perception between the senses. Both disciplines have an inherent abstractness in their aesthetic forms of expression. The ephemeral quality of both body movement and the sound of noises and tone leads to an ambiguity of performative narration. The content emerges as a medial crosstalk between the two disciplines. In their interplay, they comment on each other and thus make different possibilities of interpretation audible or visible. At the same time, they emancipate themselves from the role of mutual illustration. As a synesthetic interplay of images and sounds, everyone's own story is an essential part of human identity. Triggered by similar situations, these sensations can be released again and create a feeling of the past, often blurred and unnamed, comparable to a faded photo or words swallowed by the wind in the distance. The memories mix with the new and thus become part of our present. Lumen B is a choreography for 5 dancers, fixed media and timpanis. In 3 parts, the piece describes the search for this own story, the images of the past in its various manifestations. A supporting element of this piece is a stage set consisting of canvases covered with phosphorizing paint. The dancers move in front of these screens and are flashed by powerful spotlights. In the ensuing darkness, their bodies remain visible for a time as a frozen movement, at the time of the flash as a black silhouette in the luminescent canvases. The movements of the piece are derived from translation of various language situations, such as the safety briefing in an aeroplane or the translation of a poem by Friedrich Hölderlin into sign language. The timpani are a link between the electronic sounds and the actions on stage. They are perceived as musical instruments in the context of a sample from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, but they are also noise generators in the context of a concrete natural scenario, such as a thunderstorm. Since the video documentation is unfortunately lost, we hear an excerpt from the music with some photos of the production. Since the first half of the 19th century, for all the exploited and oppressed peoples, decimated by years of scarcity and famine, a promised land is suddenly emerging: America. They embark by the millions for a journey of no return, and for decades, the last stop of this unprecedented mass immigration is a small island called Ellis Island, where the immigration authorities of the United States have set up their reception camp. On the narrow sandbank at the mouth of the Hudson River, only a few nautical miles from the new Statue of Liberty, everyone who has since formed the American nation comes together for a short time. From 1892 to 1924, nearly 16 million people passed through Ellis Island. Most of them only stay there for a few hours. 6 dancers, accompanied by a small choir and tape, find themselves as people of very different origins in a closed place to undergo the same medical examinations and language test that decides their future and thus their hopes and visions. In this zone, with its own unknown laws, they look back on their lives so far before going through rituals at various stations in which they try to forget their origins, history, and tradition in order to conform to the image of man that allows them to enter a new life in a new place. In this endeavor, they come closer to each other and thus experience the first solidarity in a community of homeless people. In the end, a deserted place remains, and with it, the stories of people whose lives were separated here into the past and the future. The stage area of Ellis consists of a 16 by 22 meter with wide dance floor onto which projections are made from a height of approximately 14 meters using 4 video beamers. In between are 3 movable rectangular sails which cut out different large areas from the video projections of the dance floor, visible here as red rectangles on the floor. These islands represent both Ellis Island as an island in the literal sense and the different spaces that immigrants had to pass through. The music for this piece has been generated largely from speech samples in reference to the many languages heard on Ellis Island, processed with granular synthesis from single rhythmic events to large tapestries of sound. The chorus comments on the events in a function comparable to a Greek tragedy, with the texts written for this piece by the Büchner Prize winner Marcel Bayer. We will see a 12-minute trailer of the first performance in the Festspielhaus Hellerau in Dresden, Germany in 1999. The dance piece Thin as Pain is based on the short story Fragments of a Hologram Rose by William Gibson. This story is set in the future and describes a man who relives the feelings of a woman he once loved by means of so-called apparent sensory perception, ASP, a form of human sensory impressions recorded on cassettes, and thus recalls various stages of his life. The stage space consists of two parts that are separated from each other by a projection screen. In the first room, there are 3 stands with bright overhead projectors. On their projection surfaces are montages of various pictures found on the internet according to keywords from the story and printed on transparencies. On each of them is an aquarium filled with foam and water. The water slowly runs down through plastic tubes into 3 other aquariums on the floor. The more the water runs off and the foam dissolves, the more details of the picture montage fall onto the projection screen. The speed of this process determines the entire temporal course of the light and the projection. Through 3 rectangular holes in the screen, sections of the image montage falls into the back of the stage and are caught there by hanging frosted glass panels. As soon as this happens, the stage action shifts to this part of the space, which represents the recorded, filtered memory of the protagonist. The piece is musically accompanied by an improvisation for electric guitar, which processes the musical elements of the already existing piece Collector's Cut and projects them into the theater space. This music consists largely of sounds that are successively read into various audio buffers and played back as superimposed sound complexes processed by the live electronics until they dissolve again in a different order from the one in which they were recorded. We now see a summary of the premiere at the Theatre du Galpin in Geneva, Switzerland in 2006. Citizen Cage, a site-specific dance performance. The different meanings of city, space and body in order to explore a choreographic path from the open space of the landscape to the individual mental space, reflecting on the intentional and unintentional transformations in the field of tension between public, formal, private and intimate forms of being. The sound environment of the piece is realized with a platform for audio synthesis and algorithmic composition supercollider. The 40-channel composition consists of synthetic bird and nature sounds and their sonic processing, and it's complemented by samples from the video lecture Love and Community, given by Jean-Luc Nancy at the European Graduate School in 2001. The soundscape thus moves between approximate fusion with the natural environment and its artificial alteration. Each of these 40 tracks is stored on an SD card and played back via portable Bluetooth speaker. These 40 loudspeakers are started manually synchronized at the beginning of the piece and distributed around the site according to a predetermined system. This distribution was already taken into account in the creation of the 40 tracks and divides the site into different sound areas, guiding the audience as acoustic markers to the various action locations of the dancers. On this image, you can see the 8 areas consisting of 4 equally colored loudspeakers. 5 of the 40 loudspeakers are worn on the body by the 5 dancers for the entire duration of the performance and contain personal sounds that they have collected during the rehearsal period. All the lighting equipment consists of battery-powered spotlights, solar-powered garden spotlights with motion sensors, and several hundred waterproof balloon lights that are switched on at the beginning of the piece. Since the performance begins before dusk, this artificial lighting is not noticeable at first. Only as darkness falls do they replace the natural light until they are the only light sources left at the end of the evening. Finally, watch the trailer for the world premiere of Citizen Cage at the Schlachthaus Tübingen, Germany in July 2021. Thank you very much for listening and watching.